Hi, Susan Elias here. Today I'm going to be talking about grain lines, important grain lines for fashion design. I'm not only going to show you the grain lines, but I'm also going to show you how they are used most likely in fashion design, so you can become a better fashion designer. Okay, let's get started. I'm on the flat first. I need to show you that on my muslin. I have muslin right here, which is just 100% cotton, unbleached, fabric that is used most of the time for fashion design in the draping process because it's easy to detect the actual grain lines. So I have here on the edge here, as you can see, is kind of a ruffly and it's also tightly woven underneath that. That is my selvage, and my selvage always tells me that the lengthwise grain is parallel to that line. This is my crosswise grain. This is perpendicular to the selvage. So this is my lengthwise grain, this is my crosswise grain, and the bias is a 45-degree angle on the both of these. So let's get started. I like to pull a grain because that is the only way you can really learn what the grains are. And you can also know exactly where the grain is. So I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to just go ahead with my left finger and hold it down and just go along the fabric with this pin, and I am pulling a grain. That way I can actually have the perfect straight line that is on the actual grain. After I have that, I'm going to go ahead and put that in blue so you can see that better. So I have it in blue like this. I'm going to fill in my lengthwise grain all the way down the fabric. Okay, now that I have that, we're going to find the crosswise grain. We said the crosswise grain was perpendicular to this lengthwise grain. So if I just put my ruler and use one of the larger markings onto that, I will find my crosswise grain. I'm going to put that in red, and I'm just going to draw that in like that. So there's my crosswise grain. Now to find the perfect bias, it's a 45-degree angle. The trick is to use a 2-inch square on your ruler and put it in the center of those two lines like that. After you do that, you just want to put a dot on either side of that 2-inch mark. So from that dot to this dot right here. So that is your perfect bias. So I'm going to draw in the bias. Is your bias, cross grain, and then we said this was our lengthwise grain. Just want to kind of make it in a little bit thicker there so you can see it. And this is lengthwise grain. The lengthwise grain is also called the warp. It is the stronger fibers that make up the entire fabric, and they go all along the lengthwise area of your fabric. The crosswise grain is called the WEFT, and those are shorter fibers. We call them fill-in fibers that go up and down all the way along to fill in the spaces across the grain. The bias is your perfect 45-degree angle on your fabric, which is used for many different things. So now I'm going to show you on the dress form what the difference is between all these and how they are used in fashion design. So let's get started. Okay, so here I am at the dress form. That's the best way to show you the difference between the different grains. Okay, in fashion design, most of the time you're going to be using the lengthwise grain. That is the lengthwise grain that I drew in earlier that you can see right here. And the reason why that is because it's usually better grain line for most designs. And it lays pretty smooth on the body. It doesn't stick out, it doesn't hug. It's just pretty basic. And those things, when you put fitting darts or gathers, you can get a nice fitted, structured, well laid fabric on your actual design. Now, If you want to change it to the crosswise grain, that's to use the crosswise grain as my main grain line. That means I'm going to be moving it like this over the body. And you can see that with the crosswise grain, which is kind of interesting, is it kind of rolls. Let me see if I can pin this so you can see it better. Okay. It kind of rolls. It kind of wants to billow out just slightly. And I'm going to show you another trick on what you can see with that as well. But it kind of wants to move away from the body. That's where the crosswise grain is very, very popular in special things like a gathered skirt. I'm going to put the bias as if it's my straight grain. These are the different ways I can show you. I'm going to put a pin here. The beauty of the bias, you can start to see what's happening here already, even without any darts. It's that it's sort of wanting to hug and go closer to the body. This way you can actually manipulate and move a garment without even putting a dart sometimes. Remember, this is not stretch fabric. On a stretch fabric, it's a little bit of a different story, but the elements are still there. But in a biascular fabric that you can see right here, it allows you, because there is a little bit of give. See what's happening when I'm pulling that? It's giving. That's what's called mechanical stretch. That is not because it has elastic in it, like a stretch fabric does, but because it has a little bit less constraint between the crosswise grain and the lengthwise grain, it allows it to stretch a little bit. And when you do stretch it like this, you can mold it to the body. You can do nice couture pleats and all of that. And that's what's usually used on the bias. It's good for draping and more of a couture and a more of a fitted garment. Here I am at the mannequin so I can show you this demonstration of the two ruffled grain lines. Okay, the first one is I have the lengthwise grain in blue like we showed you before, and I have the cross grain like this, and that is actually where I'm gathering my line. And that's to make a ruffle or whatever you'd like to do. And you can see it's ruffling, it is performing, but they're kind of a little bit of a small ruffle. What happens when you take the crosswise grain and you decide to use that as your main grain line? So here is the main grain line, and I have the crosswise grain like that. I'm going to pin it on my waistline again so you can see. And I have it gathered. I'm gathering it on the length part of the fabric. It is billowing quite a bit. And that's because I'm forcing the fabric to be ruffled on the cross grain, meaning I'm using the crosswise grain as my up and down grain line for my garment. That makes it perform even more. I hope that makes sense, because that's really essential for fashion design. If you want to understand fashion design and interpreting designs or creating your own designs, you have to know whether you want that gathers to be really, really full or not quite as full. And you can also do it in a bias or a circle. We can do that another time. But I thank you so much for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you love it. Please subscribe to my channel, Susan Elias Couture, if you haven't already. The little buttons on the right hand side of the bottom of this screen. Give me a comment, ask me a question, because you know I'm going to answer it. Bye-bye.